Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Myers from Ishmael Interactive. Thank you for joining us once again in our speaker series. I am a middle-aged Latino man. I am here with George A. of the Greater Good Studio. And George, tell us a little bit about what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. I can give a quick introduction as well as a visual
Yeah,
description of myself. So my name is George A. I am the co-founder and co-executive director at Greater Good Studio. I'm here dressed. I'm a mostly bald Asian male with a British accent, sitting here with a dark background. And I guess we'll be talking about design, perhaps design of the federal government. Design for the social sector is probably the area I can speak to the most. And I'd say I'm very open to a conversation with you, Aaron.
excellent. Thank you so much. So, George, as we were talking about earlier, I first got your name on my radar because I saw your descriptor, it's part of your brand, Pissed Off Optimist, which you were probably the nicest pissed off man I have ever met. Just to put that out there. So, what does pissed off mean to you?
Yeah, I think it was just a term that my co-founder and I jokingly used to call ourselves. And I think there's even a point where I keep thinking she first did it, and then she keeps thinking that claiming I first said it. So who knows now between the two of us who originally first coined it.
Lost to time.
But I think yeah, it's one of those things where we're trying to express the need for both perspectives or both realities to be true. That I could be upset about a lot of things and still be hopeful, and that simply being upset is probably going to drive kind of will not be as effective because there's a lot to be righteously outraged about, but to remain simply mad, I think is going to be tough. And then also being hopelessly naive, I think is also maybe missing the point. But to be able to say, I can be both, and that perhaps we might even need to be both upset about how broken things are, and yet still hopeful about humans. I think it's the perspective that we're hoping to share, and perhaps find others who share that duality, as it were, that recognition that both of these states can be true at the same time.
Right, because if somebody's just angry, they're not really pushing solutions. It's just sort of shouting into the void.
Yeah, and I think if you're also just sort of like fingers crossed, hoping for the best because eventually everything's going to work out, that feels like you've maybe missed the harms that have happened already. And I
Yeah.
just want to be able to kind of go back and forth almost perpetually because we need to be able to have some relief, but also know that humans can be led and can be shown what can be better for them. But when they've been shown and led to places that are really dark and destructive, they'll do that too. So I want to sort of not be um, missing the bigger picture, both in terms of what is happening and also what could be better about ourselves. And in this moment, particularly, I want to be able to recognize that those things are both true.
So I like this because I have never met people as pissed off and optimistic as the government sector. And we have a lot of people who are transitioning out of the government sector, looking for things to do, looking for jobs to have. And it helps to know that there are sort of similar philosophies in the private sector and that you can make a living being both. What's your perspective on sort of that market of public good that isn't in an agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of us. Um, I think one thing that we found was that when we started using the term pissed off optimist a little more publicly, we were a little surprised at just how many other people resonated with that term. It always described the people we hired at the studio. That was sort of a very keen descriptor. It also described all of our clients because all of those folks who work in nonprofit, government, and foundation have to be able to balance well the reality that we are serving a group of people that are often in need, but that if I don't do something and if we don't kind of rally people around us, we will never kind of have the social impact we want. Those are always pissed off optimists in our mind of clients. But then we started realizing, man, there's a lot of other people who are like that, who are balancing this need. And in some cases, there might be the one person in their department or the one person in their friend group or the one person in their team who's like, yes, I know things are completely broken, and yet we can still do better. They're not maybe necessarily like rare, like precious diamonds, but rather not as common. And until maybe we like gave people a name, I think they may have sometimes just thought of themselves as the wacky one, or just sort of like the person that sort of like maybe keep wondering, questioning, why doesn't anybody else get this? Like, why can't
Right.
they see it the way that I see it? And keep wondering to that to themselves. So when we started using the term more, because we've been doing some events around the idea of a pissed off optimist, we've been finding people come to our events like something called the Angry Hour. This is our happy hour that we host. We've heard from them to say, oh my God, I finally found my people. So that's been really lovely to hear. But to your question around sort of what is the hope of these folks finding work in the private sector, I think it's there. I don't think it's as common as perhaps the commercial design industry, and certainly probably not as big as the government sector
Of
overall.
course.
But there are places to do that work. And for us, when we started a studio, which was back in 2011, there weren't a lot of other studios like ours that we saw. There was some, but it was only a handful. And as part of our, I'd say, remit or sense of responsibility to the field, we wanted to keep a track of that. So we started actually maintaining a bit of a database.
I've
The
seen it. It's
database
great.
originally, thank you. The
Yeah.
database originally started out as a Pinterest board. Okay. Completely inappropriate use of that tool because it was the wholly the wrong choice, but it was sort of like a quick way to track websites and logos. That was about it. Couldn't really do much with it. Couldn't really see other than just sort of like a scrolling wall. Oh, this is kind of helpful, but not that helpful. But we had a lot of people ask us when they met with our team, is anybody else like you? How did I don't know how you exist, but is there anybody else like you? And because we became a focal point for that question, we thought it'd probably be helpful if we started sharing who else is out there. So that sense of redirecting that energy and not kind of like keeping it to ourselves felt like that was a user need that we kept hearing from people
Right.
we met. And after a long time of stalling and sitting on the Pinterest, we thought, okay, look, we need to invest in actually making it more like a tool and not just this lookup table, as it were. So we spent a bit of time testing and designing something in Airtable, and it's proven to be a really valuable resource. So a lot of people have used it. And what's been great as well is that we find a lot of people who look to the website, to the database, looking for the one organization that they've heard of. They can't find it, and then they go, oh, I can submit them. So we make sure that the database allows for self-submission by anybody, whether or not it's the owner of the company or it's just sort of
Right.
like a supporter. Because I knew that if we were going to be a focal point again for the database, let's not be a bottleneck or necessarily gatekeeper. Now, one thing that was important about the database was that we wanted to make sure that the data was, like the word clean, like clean data.
Yeah.
One thing we want to make
Has
sure
to
is
be
that we
right.
aren't having a lot of yeah. So we try to make explicit the criteria is that if this is an organization that spends at least 50% of their time working on social sector issues, at least 50% of the revenue on social sector clients, or at least 50% of their portfolio on social sector clients, you should be in this. And when we've seen groups that are, let's say, more like social adjacent or social curious, where they mostly do work for Pepsi or a bank or something,
Right.
and they feature the one shelter or like a dog,
Right.
like a dog, a pet rescue as like a shiny barnacle. It's like, oh, that doesn't feel quite right. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
projects you're doing for AI or this bank or like this whatever it is, or like a Spotify playlist generator for dog walker startup. Like there's a lot of nonsense, but occasionally there's a social sector impact project that they probably did for free. Those types of companies I want to not have on the database because I think there's some judgment that needs to be shown. And if anything, I want people to come to the database and go, oh, this is what it looks like. This is what the field represents. So I'm being a little cheeky in that regard because I feel like I have the responsibility to do so.
Well, I think you
But
have
I
to
have at
be.
least made it explicit that
Yeah.
these are the guidelines that we want.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to a degree, I'm indicating I want this to be true. I want this to be more of the
Yeah.
norm. So if you want to be part of this, here's kind of what we require.
I mean, I think you have to be. There's, major corporations out there who have their own CSR activities. McDonald's has an internal design team that
Sure.
might do a public sector good with a thousandth of a percent of their time and revenue. That's
Mhm.
not really the same market or the same competition as everybody else, but there's three or four things you just brought up that I like, and I want to take them in order.
Okay. Okay.
One of them is the idea of, and forgive the phrase, but it's one I like to throw around because it grabs attention. You got to eat your own dog food, practice
Mm.
your own principles, walk your own walk, walk the talk. Um, you've started a database where people can find other organizations to give money to that would be going to you, potentially.
Potential.
Potentially,
Yes.
yeah. But also you are the greater good studio. So your principle is to act in the greater good of not only the people, but I guess in this case, the industry, sort of raise everybody
Yeah.
together.
I'm we are curious as to what impact we could have if we were looking after the field and not just ourselves.
I love that.
And I think that it's not anyone's explicit responsibility. Nobody asked us to, but then at the same time, nobody asked us to do anything really. But
Right.
if we didn't do it, what I can easily project is that we further concentrate power around ourselves and perhaps the people we are closely connected to, like a little gang, and that you end up with little like fiefdoms based on who you grew up with, who you went to school with, who you know proximally. And that is exactly what's happened to the commercial design sector.
Yeah.
There are little groupings, and not only does that lead to a slightly warped sense of maybe what's right or wrong, or like who does what, or like the sense of like who's best. It just seems so juvenile generally, and I
I would
think that
agree.
if you did it differently, what would that look like? To me, that's like a design question, not just like a moral question. Like, what would it look like differently if we just chose a different path?
Mhm.
And I don't think we're the kind of studio that would uh, necessarily, we certainly we would benefit from having more clients and all the usual bits and pieces. But I think as a whole, the field suffers when you have more concentration around a fewer number of individual firms versus a distributed power base across a lot of people would to say mean we'd have a stronger field and a healthier field and a more diverse field with a lot more options. And I know that we could grow a lot if we knew who those other firms were because we get asked about it. I know we could learn a lot from other leaders who do this work. And it actually, if anything, the script that we use a lot when we talk about this is we try to remain a very porous company, as in we're looking for ideas to come easily in and out like a
Right.
porous membrane, as opposed to places where I've worked, which were like absolutely airtight. And I feel like what happens in those airtight organizations is they remain stagnant, it's unhealthy, and it's the kind of things that end up being very dated quite quickly.
Well, I like the model, especially for an industry like this, because the communication across studios and companies, it's going to grow ideas everywhere because everybody's being creative in different ways. So you have a little more of an open atmosphere. You can learn from other people, but also the more you connect people with the studio they want, the more they tend to evangelize the need for the service, which leads to other opportunities for other people. So it is it's funny how design thinking and ethical thinking can often be the same. I think we have one here
Yeah, it can be. I think unfortunately there are times when I think they are opposite.
occasionally. Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons why I think that the studio has the perspective it has is because we came from a human-centered design background as the two founders, and kept finding that there were real like off-key and slightly off out of tune moments when we would interact with our nonprofit clients, where because of our training, we only know a certain amount of ways about both communicating how design works, what the process looks like, how we talk about our services, and kept finding like actually I'm not sure if that term makes a lot of sense in this case. So we found that perhaps design thinking or human-centered design, because of its origin in the commercial sector, is not a straight copy paste into the
Right.
complexity of the social sector. And that the last 14 years has been really about adaptation, um, tweaking, adjusting. And now there's like almost like a skeleton of human centered design, but not a lot of it we've had to jettison. And I think that
Right.
sort of comes from trying to have a critical view about what do we really need for the moment, for the context, the people. I think we'll always identify as designers, but at the same time, we're trying to see how we can use design to get to social impact and not have simply social impact be like an accidental outcome, which I
Right.
think sometimes I've seen in other places who I think we have learned from and now try to maybe distance ourselves from.
So you've also mentioned, well, before I go further, we have talked about the database. I will encourage everybody who's watching or listening to this to go to greatergoodstudio.com. The database is right there. You can find a lot of companies who are in this field. Some of them are looking for people. Maybe somebody who's looking for other services. It's always good to know where a market is. It's very complete, very well tagged. The data is great. You mentioned Angry Hour. Tell us more, because I understand there's one coming locally to Washington, D.C., which we have a lot of people from that area who are going to be watching and listening to this.
Yeah, the DC one has been on my radar for so long. It's been my white whale, as it were. I've been trying to find a way, an excuse to locate a angry hour in the town because I know that for me, when I think of the word pissed off optimist, I think about prior to Doge, I'd already been thinking about people who were sort of like beating their head against the wall, trying to work out
Absolutely.
how do we convince more of our elected officials, or how do we think more folks who are like died in the world government employees to think about their users? Like that would already been bad enough and hard enough, and to now have this current moment where we have a lot of really talented folks who I think were fighting tooth and nail for just perspectives that would have meant better services, better government, not only more efficient, but just simply more humanely designed services. To have them all be sort of jettisoned, and now in this current moment with everything sort of being almost erased, the need for gatherings around the sense of injustice and also a sense of like, what do we do now? For us, felt very important that we could host those types of spaces. So the angry hour is really kind of like a joke. It's obviously a happy hour. It's just
Right.
meet up with people after work, go get a drink, calm down, relax, spend some time consoling each other, thinking about what to do next. But just know you're in a room with people who are attitudinally aligned. So we called it the angry hour, the happy hour for pissed off optimists.
Love it.
So it's all in the name. You should know that when you go, you're not going to be, you're less likely to meet somebody who has such a completely different view of what just happened. Although they certainly exist in the world, I want you to be able to go and realize like I can relax here because I can tell how completely insane things seem to be right now, and I'm still wanting to fight and still put my energy somewhere. Can I find other people like that? So the angry hour is just it's very low key. There's no homework. There's no major agenda. There's no like programming as such. I actually had somebody on LinkedIn asking me, "Hey, wow, that sounds so exciting. Are you live streaming it?" I said, "Bro, it's just drinking. There's like you're not missing anything. It's okay. There's not like you might be overthinking it."
Yeah.
We have just we've done one in Chicago, and I think the rundown so far has been Chicago, Brooklyn, LA, Austin, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. We have one in Chicago next week, and then the Angry Hour in DC, which has been my dream location for a while, is coming October 8th. And it'll be right in the center of town. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, we're hoping for a great turnout. I'm hoping to be able to meet you, Aaron, in person, and
Oh,
hopefully you can
I'll
bring
be
a
there.
crew. Our hope is that we'll have a nonprofit partner nailed down by the time we have the event. I'm working with a friend of mine who I don't know if you know, but was also impacted by all of the reduction in force that happened over the last few months. And she's been a good friend of mine. She'll be speaking at our upcoming conference, but she put me in touch with a nonprofit that is also working locally in DC. So once I get all those details laid down, we'll have hopefully one of them as a speaker and be able to speak to some of their work. But
Excellent.
the event is now live, which is good. The tickets are available, and I can't wait for folks to come see us.
Now, you just mentioned the conference. Give us a date, a location, and where to find out more.
Right, right. So the conference is our big dream of ours. So Angry Hour was really almost like a design way of prototyping events to say like, do people want to come out? Can we draw a crowd? Do people want to turn like congregate around this idea of a pissed off optimist? And we kept doing them and kept finding that the events kept selling out. Without, well, actually, okay, maybe this could be a thing. So we committed to doing something called the Livid Conference. It's a gathering for pissed off optimists. Okay, so the Livid Conference is an in-person and virtual conference. It's 1 day and it's happening on November 3rd. It's hosted here in Chicago. So for folks who might want to come, you'll see a mix and a gathering of people basically from the design field as well as the social sector. And I
Nice.
think what we found is that there are often design conferences, social sector conferences, but not a lot of conferences where both meet. And I'm
Hmm.
hoping that both the social sector nonprofit folks start to see designers as their peers, as an ally towards social change. And I want more designers to come there and go, oh, I personally can get the social impact by working more closely with people who perhaps might be proximally different from me, but I can't treat them as I can't show up as a savior. Like I
Absolutely.
want both sides to see each other as like, oh, they're real people, they have real needs and real challenges, and that together we can work on a solution. That is that's our remit both in the world, but also the idea of the conference. The speaker lineup is being announced this week. I cannot wait to have people
Nice.
understand who we have. We've got some gets that I cannot. I'm still blown away by that they responded, said yes, we'll do this. So I'm really thrilled, and I'm really hoping, Aaron, that when you look at the lineup, you might recognize some folks, but also that you'll be able to see like some people go, oh right, this is the kind of perspective we're getting for. So we'll have a keynote, but there'll be a panel set up around the state of design
Hmm.
as it is right now, because obviously there's a lot to talk about, and then the state of the social sector. There'll be some rapid talks from folks who are new and more like emerging voices, and then there's some workshops at the end. And of course, we'll end the night on an angry hour because, we may as well.
Outstanding. So, George, thank you for talking with us. Here at Ishmael Interactive, we like to end every speaker session with what we call the one for fun.
Oh,
The one for fun is a silly question that serves as a mental bookmark to our listeners because there's a lot that happens in a conversation, but if you give them something like, oh, that's the one where they talked about what do you like on your hot dog, they tend to remember it better.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
weird, but it works. Now, going with our theme of optimism and anger and being pissed off, I wanted to flip it a little and go with, just as an example, one thing that makes me happy recently
Mm.
is my spouse took a trip over to LA, and something that they brought back is just the idea of every afternoon now we have fruit and tahini in a bowl and we snack.
Oh,
Beautiful.
lovely,
It makes me happy.
lovely.
So, in this past recent time, what's made you happy?
Um, I'm a big fan of this new show that I've been watching on Apple TV.
Yeah,
It's called Slow Horses. It's it's like a crime drama set in England, in London specifically, about British spies. Okay. But
really.
what's funny is that all of them are slightly crap at being a spy. They're all dropouts basically from MI6. So Gary Oldman is the lead of this performance. He's a complete degenerate. He like actually is kind of fairly despicable. And the show is amazing. It's hilarious, incredibly British. It's the kind of thing that I know that if my American wife were to watch, we'd have to have the subtitles because she'd be like, "What are you talking about?" half the time.
Right.
It's very good. So Slow Horses is the thing that's given me joy a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much from us
Thanks,
here
Eric.
at Ishmael Interactive and Greater Good Studio. We'll be seeing you.
Thank you very much.